I've waxed lyrical about X-Men the Animated Series in previous videos, so I'm going to spare you my gushing today and just get straight into this review. But suffice it to say, I'm really pleased to be able to be bringing you a review of Morph from X-Men the Animated Series. This was, I believe, an original character created just for the animated series, which is fantastic. So I really like this character. I've got a lot of affection for this character and his story arc in that show, and it's great to finally have him in this series. We've seen a few re-releases of figures that had already been released, X-Men, in this line, but of course with brand new paint decos. But this is the first original character in this line, which is brilliant to see. And he was also, I believe, an exclusive. You could only get him through Hasbro Pulse. And somewhat inexplicably, he is a little bit more pricey than the other figures in this line. Not by a huge amount, but there's certainly an extra £4 or £5 you're going to have to part with to buy this figure. And I don't think there's really anything here that warrants that extra money, other than he's just harder to get hold of. But let's start off by taking a look at this packaging. As you can see, this is of course the new cardboard packaging that we're starting to see from Hasbro more and more. This is styled as a VHS cassette. I happen to really like this approach. I talked about this quite a bit in my Wolverine review, but I really like this. This is definitely nostalgic. It takes me back very much to the 90s. I had some of the X-Men animated series episodes on VHS, and so this is definitely reminiscent to that, and I'm all for that. So I think this is a really novel and interesting approach to this packaging and makes it a bit more interesting and fun. In terms of the image, obviously this is a brand new original image, I believe. This looks really quite nice. It's quite colourful. There's a lot of action going on in it. There's an interesting background, and I think this looks really, really good on display. When we flip the packaging on its side, again, we have that pretty standard VHS sort of style and approach, which is really cool. We have the Marvel Comics icon at the top of the packaging there. We have this lovely sort of square emblem where we have the portrait of the character looking to the side, which is cool. We have the X-Men logo. We have the character's name in the X logo underneath that. And then we have this Marvel Legends kind of styled like VHS. I think this looks really, really good. I love this approach. I think it's really fun. I think it's really colourful as well, and the best thing about it, as you start to buy more from this line, they start to stack up really nicely. So they are very presentable and they're very colourful and very fun to look at, and I like that they're consistent as well, so you see each of the character portraits all looking in the same direction. This is a really nice, attractive collection. And then finally, on the reverse of the packaging, we have an awful lot of text. This is very text heavy, and most of this, I mean almost a third of the packaging is just small print, which is a bit of a turn off for me personally, but the top 2/3 of the packaging go quite nicely done. We have an image of the figure here, and I think this is actually a digitally rendered version of the figure as opposed to a photo of the figure itself, so it looks quite nice. It's a little bit bland. Most of the packaging is just white at the back there, but there's some text which is quite nicely done, a little bit of bio about the character but repeated in multiple languages. Yeah, it's not the most striking on the reverse, to be honest, but it's fine, it does the job. So here he is out of the packaging, and I have to say, I think the first thing that's going to be very noticeable of this figure is just how bright and colourful he is. I love the colours they've used for this line of figures. It really makes them pop. I think they look fantastic with these really hyper brilliant colours, and you'll also notice he has the bomber jacket as well, which is a nice little touch. Now, in terms of sculpting, I don't think this is bad. This is a pretty decent likeness, although I have to say I'm not convinced it's entirely accurate. Now, obviously, Morph is a shapeshifter, so his appearance in the animated series varies quite a lot, but I do feel like his face is a little bit more elongated, whereas here it seems a bit more square-jawed. That might just be me, but hey, this is still a perfectly recognisable portrait. This is clearly Morph, and I think they've done a pretty decent job overall. Looking at the torso, of course, we can see that the arms of the bomber jacket are plastic, they're moulded into place, but the jacket itself is actually a loose rubber. You have seen this before, probably on the Cyclops figure that was released as part of the Love Triangle box set a few years ago. This works really nice. I really like this mold. I think it's really very good. Again, we have the usual colours that you'd expect, only turned up to 11, so to speak. Obviously much brighter, much more colourful, which is fantastic. But you also have this cell shading as well to represent the look that it has in the animated series, because they would often have their shaded areas, shadow on various parts of the body, and this replicates that pretty successfully, I think. Where it tends to fall down for me, though, is on the legs, and in particular on the boots. Wherever there's particularly brighter areas, it can feel a little bit too thick, a little bit too much. The upper torso is quite nice, it's quite subtle there, but on the boots in particular it's quite strong and it is a little bit distracting sometimes. In terms of articulation, they have pretty much recycled the base body for the recent Human Torch figure that we had from last year, so you'll probably know what to expect. He's got a ball joint in the head. This is pretty good stuff. He's got a huge range of motion here. He can look all the way around, he can look to the side, he can look up and down with a good range of motion, which is fantastic. He's got ball joints in the shoulders, so his arms can lift up and out, which is great. He's got that complementary bicep swivel as well. And then at the lower arm, he's actually got a pin swivel here, so that lower arm can spin all the way around, and of course it hinges to about 90 degrees as well. Then he's got another pin swivel at the wrist, so that lower wrist spins all the way around, and that also hinges forwards and backwards a pretty decent distance. Now, also inside his jacket, if you look carefully, you can see in the shoulder he's got that butterfly wing effect, which is really, really good. I love this joint. It really gives a huge range of motion to those arms, bending forwards and backwards. Now, he's got a swivel at the waist, so he can spin all the way around if you want him to. He's got the ab crunch, so he can look forwards and backwards, probably more forwards than backwards in truth, but nevertheless, he's got ball joints in the hips, so his legs can kick out to the side. There's an upper thigh swivel, and there's even a lower leg swivel as well, which is pretty cool. The legs kick forwards, they kick backwards, kind of, just a bit. He's got double jointed knees, so of course they bend right the way back, and then he's also got ankle pivot as well, which can move the foot from side to side, and of course hinges forwards and backwards. He also comes with a couple of extra pieces as well, including a pair of open hands, which are quite nice. I don't recognise the sculpt actually, so this is quite fresh, and an alternative head as well. And this is the sort of possessed version of Morph, for lack of a better description. This is evil Morph, I suppose. And here he is with those alternative accessories. I really like this head sculpt. I think this is really, really nicely done. It's got that slight sneer, which is pretty cool. And I love the shading around the eyes, just as it appeared in the animated series. So I think they've done a really nice job with this particular profile. I think this is my favourite of the two looks. And the open hands are really good as well. There seems to be a fair amount of detailing, particularly around the palms, which is unusual, which I really like. And then for the sake of a size comparison, here he is standing next to the Wolverine from this series. They scale very, very nicely together, and as you can see, they're very bright and colourful, and yeah, these look really good together. So, final thoughts from me. Well, I'm happy, I'm delighted to be able to give this figure 5 stars. I really, really love it actually, I have to say. He's surpassed my expectations. I was already quite excited and anticipating getting hold of him, but he's managed to meet those expectations and still find a way to surprise me, which is brilliant. I think they've done a really tremendous job with this figure. For a start, I think it's a fantastic body mould. I really love this sculpt. I loved it on the Human Torch last year. It's got every point of articulation you could possibly want. I think they've thrown everything at it, which is brilliant. Everything works on him, like there's no stiffness or anything like that. It's all very smooth in terms of how the joints work, and yet tight enough to be able to hold any pose that you want, which is great. I really like the bomber jacket as well. I'm really pleased they gave him that little bit of distinctive colouring and makes him look a little bit different from the other figures in the line. But I love that the colours that are there, that brilliant yellow and that deep navy blue, just looks so good and so vivid, and I think they've just done a tremendous job. And of course, I'm delighted to actually have this character finally make his debut in the Marvel Legends line. So I think all in all, everything about this figure has come together beautifully, and I think it's a pretty top-notch entry into this sub-line of Marvel Legends figures. I really, really like this line. I can feel myself steadily falling in love with it. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe, as there'll be plenty more videos soon.